Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back, to the Zombie Train. This is the beginning of, well, let's see. Nobody told me not to do this, and just about everybody in the comments of last video told me to do this. So, this is the beginning of story time, but first I'm going to take the first couple of minutes of the video to tell you what's going to be in store for today, aside from the story. First things first, what we're doing is we are covering this area with ground. That's it. We get this area flattened out so that eventually I can send it off to Jader and have him farm the hell out of it. We get up to the point where I'm going to have to start blending this with the mountains. But first I'm going to do the mountains, so I go over there and I patch up a couple other pieces of terrain. Then I get tired of terrain work and go off and finish all of the texturing around that segment where Power Island is, where we were working a week ago, or 2 weeks ago. So, no, it was last week. Wasn't it? 2 weeks ago? What did we do? Whatever. Anyways. This is, you guys are going to be able to look at this, but you guys are going to be able to listen to me, and what I'm going to be talking to you guys about is the Zombie Train. So, a lot of you have asked me in the past, why is this series called the Zombie Train? Obviously, those of you who have not watched the first episode don't know the answer to that question. Frankly, I wouldn't blame you at this point. The first episode is rather long, and really, the thing wasn't well written to begin with. So, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go back to the start, and I'm gonna tell you the story of. I'm gonna tell you, of course, the abridged version of what happened around the beginning. There's still a lot that you can take out of that story. There's a lot of the specifics are more or less all there, but the actual beginnings of the Zombie Train were a lot, well, they were significantly more in-depth. You know, like I've said, most of the specifics are right there, and I've elaborated a little bit on them in later things, but anyways, it's worth saying. The Zombie Train is, well, I'll do this. On December 21st, 2012, the world as we knew it came to an end. The threat of zombies had sort of hung in the air for a very long time. These third world corners, these out in the backwoods of wherever you'd hear about, well, there are zombies out here, and for a long time there were just teams. These were called the Alpha teams, and they were generally run by the U.S. military, which were sent to dispatch the zombies, and for the most part they did, but they were a very stopgap measure because we knew things were going to get worse, and by we I mean the higher-ups. The, civilians at home had no idea what was really going on, and myself included. This is all summed up fairly well in Max Brooks' World War Z. I'm talking about the book, not the movie. So if you want to get an idea of really how the war started, and the months and years leading up until the Great Panic on December 21st, I will point out that in his book he never names a date, which is why I was able to use it. And, world was supposed to end, wasn't it? Anyways. We've got, I had well, for the size of my family, not much of my family. And this includes my parents, my stepmom as well, and then a couple of my cousins, and aunt and an uncle, a couple of unrelated people, and some friends of mine as well. We sought refuge in a moving vehicle, and this was a plan that I had come up with, a long while beforehand, but, of course it was largely deemed useless by, most people. It was, well, zombies, just a myth, Of course they were. Man, I wonder what happened to many of those people, I'm sure there were a couple of holdouts towards the end, but I have no idea what the hell would happen to them. You can't just walk into town, or you couldn't just walk into town the day after the Great Panic. So the Great Panic was the day when the world came to an end. It was the day when suddenly zombies were everywhere. And it was the kind of thing where it happened, but you ignored it up till this point, and then this point came, and it was sort of the tipping point where suddenly the infection has reached critical mass. There's people getting infected day to day, and then, it hits news media, and then people start panicking. And frankly, up until the Great Panic, people killed by zombies, to that point, numbered fewer than the amount killed in the fallout from the Great Panic by other humans. If you can imagine this mass exodus from populated places, this immediate running of resources, so many buildings destroyed, so many, fuel depots burned, so many people dead, because other people, either paranoid or, think of like, how Black Friday can get a little bit intense, like get beat down by this overly obese woman in Walmart because she wants the last bottle of Cookie Crisps, or whatever the hell, bottle of Cookie Crisp, Anyways, I was gonna go with some sort of box cereal there, but I said bottle. This is that, except you're actually doing it to freaking survive. And so you've got people who normally wouldn't be hoarding, grabbing everything in sight, and then they get out of the parking lot and they get mauled by people who want those supplies as well. Everyone was out for themselves, and you'd get occasionally groups that would band together, but, until, it was a little while till order came back again. Meanwhile, this hit, and we sort of all sheltered in place, especially those of my family that had known about the plan. We all sort of sheltered in place. And a couple days after, realizing that, now the human threat was down, but the zombie threat was increasing, we decided, we got together and we decided to make a break for it. At this point, large sections of the world still had power. The Great Panic, things sort of came to a grinding halt, but it would be a little while before the fallout was really felt. It was people running north, people doing this, that, and the other. Of course, the highways were clogged and filled with zombies at this point, because those are just like tasty, as Simmons would say, tasty flesh bottleneck. I don't remember how many days it was. It was probably, it was the 21st that everything went down, and then 2 or 3 days later would be actually Christmas. So it must have been pretty close to Christmas that we actually left Rhode Island, and most of us left Rhode Island. Emilio was in charge of the rest of the rendezvous. We didn't want to take too many people out, because we were going to come back for the rest of them and come back for whoever we could. At this point, we told everyone possible about what this plan was going to be. Before, we'd kind of kept it under wraps because, it's preposterous. But in a nutshell, and I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail here unless you want to hear about it, but I'm just going to try and get you guys all up to speed to what the zombie train is. So, this is in the last days of not 3985, wow, no, not him, of 3254s. It's a Mikado at Steamtown, an S1B type, Canadian National Mikado. This was in the last days of, we call him Blount, the Iron Horseman. The last days of his service there at Steamtown before he was going under for rebuild. So we ran out there. I mean, in the meantime, we encountered all manner of dead and, living and undead. The walls of Worcester at that point were sort of a thing. They were sort of ramshackle. They didn't last a huge amount of time. But they were like, whoa, look at what these people can do. Worcester had sort of built itself up to the point where it was fairly formidable. But, eventually they were one of the first, the early settlements were some of the first to fall. They didn't last a huge amount of time. So, what happened was, we go over to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where Steamtown is, and of course the place is deserted. The highways were jammed. It took us like 2 days of driving to get up there. Over there, when normally it'd be about a 4-hour drive. So, we got over there, and the problem there was that, we could weasel our way into the city. There weren't too many zombies to be seen up until we got to Steamtown itself. We hung out the night in the roundhouse, barricaded ourselves in. Again, nothing to be seen there. Our entrance to town must have made some noise, but they really weren't bothering with us. The zombies, they've got a hell of a sense of hearing. They will, they'll hear anything from a mile away. Especially other zombies. If one of them starts moaning, you attract all the other ones around you. Anyways, we got into the roundhouse there. Next morning, we fired the engine up. And it was while we were getting everything ready to move that we started seeing the zombies. And we had no idea where they all were. Apparently, what had happened with the town, people had barricaded themselves in the mall. And that had lasted a couple of days, it looked like. And then the zombies got in through whatever opening there was. And killed everyone in the mall. So you had a mall, which is right across from Steamtown, a mall full of zombies, full of Zacks, ghouls, whatever sort of name nomenclature you're going to use for a zombie. The mall full of zombies there, they couldn't get to us because, well, boxing them out was just as well boxing them in. They'd gotten in, but they hadn't destroyed the fortifications. So they were having trouble getting out. Zombies aren't immensely smart. They can't really open a door, they'll just sort of beat on it. They'll beat on it till either they've broken their arms to the point where they can't beat on it, or until they've broken the door. That's just what they do. And these, then they started filtering out of the mall. It was getting to be first light. This was maybe Christmas, well, no, let's see. If we left 24th, I don't remember the actual dating of it. If we left the 24th, we got there the 26th. This would be the 27th or 28th that we were getting ready to leave, And we're firing the engine up, which, the engine has not been fired up. It's the winter time, so it's not good weather. Well, it's cold at least. Engine doesn't want to be fired up. And, again, I'd never run a steam engine before, so this was me being very careful with this thing. Being very ginger, getting the engine moving the first time was a real rush, but it was also real difficult. Even when it was just an engine tender on its own. So back that thing out onto the turntable, get the turntable moving, turn the engine, get it out of the roundhouse, and this is about the time they started coming out of the mall. And so we had people, we'd acquired some firearms. My family's not a firearm-heavy family. And by not a firearm-heavy family, I mean nobody in my family has a gun. But we'd acquired some on the way, either from corpses or, I believe we looted a gun store. Not that there was an immense amount left in that, but, these things tend to give way, after the first initial rush. People went in, grabbed what they could, and scrammed. Then it was generally the second, those first people didn't necessarily grab everything, they grabbed what they could carry. And so when you come through on the second scavenger run, you're gonna, if you sit down and work at it, you're gonna get a lot more stuff. So we were able to grab some stuff out of there, and we got, well, weaponry enough. Needless to say, I had this silenced pistol, and I went through quite a few silenced pistols in the run of the zombie train, and a couple of unsilenced pistols, but I always went with the silenced ones for the sake of noise. Like I told you, the zombies will hear you anywhere. So we got the engine out, and we were pulling out coaches. We were pulling out the coaches that had been redone that were actually nice. We were pulling out some freight cars. We were grabbing a couple box cars if we could, a couple flat cars, because we wanted to load at least one of our cars on. We ended up loading, I think, we got up there with like 4. We ended up loading 2 and a hand car. Eventually, we got down to just the Jeep, because, who needs a sedan or an SUV, really? We got down to just the Jeep and a hand car on a flat car, and we used the other flat car for other stuff. But we ended up getting out of there with a train, with some coal hoppers for extra fuel, tankers for water and fuel. Getting the fuel, we had to siphon a lot of vehicles to get the fuel there, and with gasoline, of course, for our cars. We had to siphon a lot of vehicles, and that was a pain. But we ended up getting out of there. You know, the zombies were being a real problem. They had gotten in the yard. They were climbing on our stuff. They were trying to climb into the engine. That's when I started keeping a shotgun in the engine. But then, yeah, we got out of Steamtown with however many of us there were. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week. And that is a very rough idea of the zombie train. And I'll explain more next week. Trainman out.